Allow me to introduce myself.
I am the last sane sports fan.
I am a genius by trade.
I just knew too much. Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Possibly.
Hello everyone and welcome once again to The View from the Midwest. A couple topics that I want to try to get to today. One is going to be the NHL and the other one is going to be a response to an argument that's been going on ESPNFC. We'll start with the latter, and if I don't get to the hockey, we'll cover that tomorrow. But I wanted to talk about something that's been discussed heavily the last couple days on ESPNFC, which is a show that I thoroughly enjoy and watch pretty much on a daily basis when the show is on air. But the topic that's been covered here recently in the last couple days is whether or not the Premier League is the hardest league to win, the most difficult to win. Some people have agreed with Jose Mourinho's point that it is. Whether or not he actually believes that or not, I don't know, because the man plays so much to the media and likes to hear the sound of his own voice that's neither here nor there. But to me, the argument made that it isn't is somewhat ridiculous, not because they're totally wrong in thinking that way, but because the argument presented is totally wrong. Ali Moreno, who I really respect his opinion on a lot of stuff, because I find him to be very entertaining and a very good analyst at what he does. But his argument basically goes under the premise that, well, the Champions League doesn't have any English teams, so that doesn't mean that the Premier League is the most difficult to win, and that all these Spanish teams and German teams are winning by just as many points as Chelsea did this year. Well, you're taking an extremely small sample size and trying to apply it to a larger argument. Because if you look at the statistics, and if you want to look at actual facts that apply to the argument, and not just support the idea that you want to have that Spanish and German teams might be better, 10 of the last 11 champions in La Liga have been Real Madrid or Barcelona. 11 of the last 12 years, one of those two teams has finished second. So whoever won, the other team would finish second, except for 1 or 2 years here or there sprinkled in throughout the last decade plus. 19 of the last 23 Bundesliga champions were Bayern Munich or Borussia Dortmund. So the Bundesliga as well has had pretty much the same two champions for the better part of almost 25 years. Now, Manchester United has dominated the Premier League era. There's no denying that. Manchester United has won 12 titles in the Premier League era, which started in 92 and 93. But the Premier League has also seen Arsenal, Chelsea, even Blackburn win back in 95. City's also won some titles. Newcastle finished runner-up several times in the 90s. Liverpool, quite frankly, should have been champion last season if they didn't have a few slip-ups, which shows how tight the Premier League can be oftentimes. Leeds United finished third in 99-2000, and Nottingham Forest finished third in 95, and Norwich finished third in 93. Now, granted, these are quite a few years ago. We're approaching 20 years plus now, but still, that goes to show that other teams have been involved in the Premier League race. It's not the same couple teams every single time, where basically, if you put money down, regardless of maybe the odds are only 2-1 on a certain team at the beginning of the year, you're still going to pull in money. You don't necessarily always know who's going to win the Premier League. Nobody could have guessed that Liverpool was going to go on the run that they did last year. It's proving to be somewhat of a fluke because they've fallen back to the pack this season. But still, you get those interchanging of teams. Teams go up, teams go down. It is the same 5 or 6 teams always in there, but at least it's a race. And that has been the question. What is the most difficult league to win? Not necessarily what is the best league or what league has the best teams in it. That is what the Champions League decides, who is playing the best that time of year. Because you look back to 2003-04, Porto played AS Monaco in the Champions League final. Porto won. Are we really going to say that the Portuguese league was the best in the world, or that League One was the second best league in the world just because those two teams had the Champions League finalists? You go back even closer, 2009-2010, Inter beat Bayern Munich. Are we really going to say that the Serie A was the best league in the world that year, or even the toughest league to win? One doesn't always equate to the other. So saying that Chelsea is not involved in the Champions League, so therefore their league wasn't the hardest to win, isn't an apples-to-apples comparison. The Premier League, quite frankly, right now, is the most difficult to win, not because it has the best teams, but because regardless of the fact that this year Chelsea won by a large margin, and it's been decided for quite a while, by and large, that is not the case. You have closer races in the Premier League, and things are not decided until later in the year. I mean, the Bundesliga last season was a joke. Bayern Munich had it wrapped up so early that it ended up costing them later because they were trying to rest too many people because they had things wrapped up so early. You could make a case for La Liga simply because Barcelona and Real Madrid are constantly jockeying for position, so that league is not easy to win. It's difficult, but it's always the same two teams. The Premier League has a multitude of teams that can win, and you see more games dropped to lower level teams, whereas the top teams in those other leagues are winning 8-0 on a regular basis. Now again, this isn't an argument of which teams are better and which teams have more quality. That isn't the argument, and I think that's the argument that Ali Moreno wants to apply to it. That's not necessarily the argument being made. It is simply that the Premier League is tougher to win year in, year out than those other leagues. Well, I've eaten up a lot of time today, so we're going to skip the NHL discussion, cover that a little bit in tomorrow's show. So be sure to tune in for that. That is the view from the Midwest. What is your view? Leave a little comment down in the section below. As always, comment, rate, and subscribe. If you're watching on Facebook, share it around with your friends. And I will see you next time.
I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place. Even your emotions have an echo in so much space.